Today's episode is sponsored by Select Savory Seasonings. Have you ever noticed that most barbecue rubs on the market use sugar as the first or second ingredient? Worry no longer. With Select Savory Seasonings, they offer fresh, gourmet, small batch, sugar-free and additive-free seasonings and spices to help you make good, tasty food that is good for you so that you can lose weight, get healthy, and feel amazing. Check them out today at selectsavory.com and use coupon code PODCAST to receive 15% off your first order.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Simple Low Carb Lifestyle Podcast. Today I'm joined by Craig Emmerich. Emmerich or Emmerich? I should have asked that. Emmerich.
Yeah.
And Craig and Maria are all over social media with their recipes, their kids, and they've been a great influence to the community. And it's great to have you on today. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Let's just with everyone else, like same as always. Let's just start with your story. How did you get into a keto and then eventually, obviously, carnivore, and how that's affected your life and even your family along those lines too?
Sure. Maria, probably a few years before, a couple years after we met, so over 20 years ago, she had a lot of issues. She had IBS, acid reflux, PCOS, extra weight that she just couldn't get rid of, even though she was like running marathons, doing all this stuff. And she just started researching herself while she was in college, because she was in college for nutrition and exercise physiology. And a lot of what she was learning was food pyramid type stuff. She's like, I've been doing this. I've been eating, low fats and healthy whole grains, and it's not working. So she just kept researching and testing on herself, and slowly got better. And as she was implementing lower carb and finding these things out about what was essentially keto back then, and it just worked for her. And so she had other people asking her, she lost the extra weight, reversed her PCOS, got rid of all of her symptoms, her issues. So people are asking her, how she did it. So she started kind of working with people, helping them down this path, and eventually wrote a book for our adoption, help fund our adoption. That's the first book she wrote, was to help. She had a bunch of recipes. She just threw them together in this little book that we sold to help fund, bring our boys home. It me took a little bit longer, maybe 5-6 years into our relationship before I came along, partially because I didn't have a lot of the symptoms or issues. I was generally didn't have any health issues other than, maybe had an extra 30 pounds that I was carrying around. But other than that, I didn't have any health issues, so it wasn't as pressing for me. But I started to eat her food when she made it, and I realized how good I felt. And I'm like, well, I want to feel like this all the time. Yeah. And so I used to just, on the weekends, eat whatever I want and then eat what she made me during the week. And I just said, it's not worth it anymore. I feel like crap on the weekends. Yep. I'm going to cut it out. And part of that too was, I brewed my own beer, and, I'm strong German background, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can give this up. Well, I did, and I felt a lot better. And our boys, when we brought them home from Ethiopia when they were 1 and 2 years old, people think it's crazy nowadays, but which is, to me, is crazy that they eat, whole foods, eating meat and low carb vegetables. I mean, it's doesn't seem that crazy, but we fed them what we ate. Yes. Kai at a little over a year old when we brought him home, we were blessed to have somebody who pumped breast milk for us, and so he transitioned on that to his whole foods. And when he was eating whole foods, he supplemented with bone broth that we made in his bottle, and he just ate food, hamburger, egg yolks, he loves salmon, all this. We just fed them real food, and they just thrived. And, they've been eating this way ever since. So our kids have been keto for 9 years, and they're, 10 and 11 years old. So, and the whole family has been this way.
Yep. I mean, I didn't adopt my kids, but both of ours, I told my wife, they're not going to deal with what I dealt with. They are going to have a healthy childhood, unlike myself. They're going to eat whole, real food. And so they same thing. They eat like I do. Now, I didn't always do that, but now it's like, okay, that's it. In my case, I had to have a mind shift because I kept going back to what I shouldn't have, even after I had the boys. But they love it and they don't know any different. It's they're
Yeah. I mean, I know it can be challenging for some parents, that kids that have been into the sugary world for a while. But, if you just, especially if they're younger, they don't go shopping, right? So just don't bring it in the house.
Exactly.
And it's not an option. You got to eat what you bring in. And the thing that it bothers me is some of these experts in, keto and health, and you see them post on Instagram or whatever, and their kids are just eating breakfast cereals and sugar. And it's like you said, they don't miraculously turn 18 and leave the house and say, okay, now I know how to eat healthy.
Exactly.
It's a learned activity, and you gotta help them understand what the food is and how it affects them, and that's something they need to learn their whole life.
Well, it's like anything in life. I mean, if you're not taught properly, it's even harder to change after it's been indoctrinated into you. So that's why both of us we started off on the right foot from day one to teach and train them. And even in my case, our kids did have more fruit earlier on. I mean, we would buy grapes and bananas and stuff. And then finally, I remember it was probably Dr. Naaman said, those are just bags of sugar you're giving your kids.
Yeah.
And so I just told my wife, we're just not buying it. If we do, it's once, maybe twice a year. It's a treat. That's their dessert for that, but that's it. And it came down to, like you just said, I do the shopping. They don't. Hey, do we have? Nope.
Yeah.
Why not? Didn't buy any.
Yeah.
And within about 2, maybe 3 weeks, they quit asking because it's not in the house. Why do I ask for what's not here?
It's great.
So it can be done.
The thing with those is we're sort of indoctrinated, and this kind of gets into the, nutrient density that we talked earlier, that you got to have a banana for the potassium, or you got to have, this for these nutrients.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that when we wrote our book Keto, which, boy, we started writing that at least 5 years ago now. It took a while to write. I was, at that point, probably been keto myself for 10 years. And so I think I'm pretty into nutrition and understanding all of this at that point. And I started making these charts of, vitamins and minerals in different foods. And I'm like, why don't I know this?
Yeah.
Beef on every vitamin and mineral was coming out above almost every single item. I think I did 13 of the key vitamins and minerals that we have in our food. Almost every one, it was beating out kale. It was beating out, blueberries. It was, these supposed superfoods. Beef is beating it.
Yeah.
So why are we even talking about it in that perspective? That it's misunderstanding of where we're getting our nutrients.
Well, I know part of the problem is when they tested beef, for example, back in the day to find its nutrients, they just said, there's no vitamin C in it, so they didn't bother. So they said it was 0, but never even checked. And yet, let's pick on Dr. Sean Baker. He doesn't have scurvy yet, and all he eats is steak.
Well, it just thinking from a logical perspective, where do you store glucose?
In the liver, correct?
In your liver and muscle.
Yeah.
Right? So there's going to be some small amount of carbohydrate, and with that, typically you have minerals that are in the muscle too. But an example is the liver. The liver has got a lot of vitamin C because they actually tested the liver, right? Yep. So there is vitamin C in the muscle meat too, just a smaller amount. But here's the thing: the less carbohydrates you eat, the less vitamin C you need.
Yes.
And so when you're eating essentially 0 carbohydrates, eating carnivore or something like that, your requirements for vitamin C are very, very low.
Because your body's not fighting, the receptors aren't fighting, especially with carbs. Well, you have to have higher vitamin C because it's not absorbing it as well when you're eating the garbage.
That's right.
Same with the nutrient density between beef and other plant-based products. It's like, yeah, it may be full of X, Y, and Z vitamin, but is it available to our bodies? Can we actually absorb that nutrient? And many times we can't. Or we'll pick on almonds. They're full of oxalates, for example. So now your body's, well, I'm getting healthy stuff, but boy, some of the other stuff that's in there, your body may not like. It can cause other problems in the process where I mean, unless there's a personal aversion to meat, I don't know anyone that can, I guess there are some very, very minute cases where people have a problem with it, but
Yeah.
our bodies are designed to, absorb our nutrients from meat-based products, and then use, plants more as a extra flavor, something a little bit different to
Yeah,
have along the
flavor,
side.
texture, and that kind of thing. And that's what and so, I did a whole chapter in our keto book about all these look at where the nutrients are coming from. And then when we wrote our carnivore book, I took that kind of the next level, like you're talking. And one of the studies that I thought was really enlightening is, so they look at blood plasma. They're looking at your blood after you eat something to see how much of a nutrient gets into the blood. That's what matters, right? If it goes right through you, who cares how much, magnesium is in it if it goes right out, and is excreted. So what they did is they tested oysters. And when you eat oysters, you get a ton of zinc. It's a great source of zinc. They tested the blood plasma when people just ate oysters by themselves. Huge increase in zinc in the blood.
Yep.
You're absorbing all that zinc. They then tested it when they ate oysters with black beans. About a third of the zinc got into the blood.
Yep.
They then tested it with oysters and corn tortilla chips, and none of the zinc got into the blood. So
Danny Vega was trying to remember what that was when I talked to him before. So that's what he was like, the tortillas, but
we have the charts of the study in our carnivore book, but it's amazing that, because you think about it, well, things like oxalates. Oxalates are anti-nutrients. All plants have anti-nutrients. They're compounds the body doesn't need, doesn't want, it has to detoxify and get rid of. And oxalates are one of the big ones that are bothersome to people. And what happens with oxalates is when the body tries to get rid of them, the oxalates bind to things like calcium or magnesium or zinc. It's going to bind to them, and then the body is getting rid of them. It goes out. Yep. So the calcium or magnesium that it bound to goes out with it. And that's also why you can, when you cut out foods with oxalates, sometimes people get kidney stones and things, because it's not the calcium's fault. It's the oxalates that are being dumped that then build up. And if you don't stay hydrated, they can build up and cause a calcium oxalate kidney stone. That's the majority of kidney stones are because of the original problem, which was the oxalate intake. So
yeah, it's not that keto caused the kidney stones. It's that keto is clearing, your body's now saying, wait a minute, I got to clear this stuff out. And unfortunately, the side effect of that cleansing is kidney stones and or that just, coming out the skin. I mean, I've dealt with that myself, not as bad as others. But I've seen some really large stones come out of people. Yeah. Out of the eyes.
The eye could be a lot of times. It goes out wherever it can get them out.
And it's painful. I could not imagine having crystals popping out of my body that large that I've seen other people do. But it's amazing how big of a difference it makes once it's gone. Like you've already said, you feel so much better without that garbage in your system.
And it's an important thing, kind of taking not just the nutrients that are in the food, but the bioavailability of those nutrients. So the example we gave, getting it into your bloodstream, that's what really matters. And then the next step is the oxalates. We're always, anti-nutrients. We're always taught that fruits and vegetables should be unlimited because there's nothing negative about them. Well, there is. Yeah. And the oxalates are just one example. There's lectins, there's glucosinolates, there's, all of these compounds, people that are sensitive to nightshades, that's a anti-nutrient that's common in those plants that those people are sensitive to. Yep. So it's the anti-nutrient that's causing the problem. So, they're not a free food. They do come with negatives where if you think about beef, there's not really a negative. Yep. You're getting tons of nutrients, bioavailable, you get protein to build muscle, fat to fuel your body. There's no real negative there.
Yeah. And of course, everybody and every body is different. So some people can handle the veggies better than others. Yeah. I find that without them, I feel better. I have, sleep better. And then there's others that, hey, they'll have a big salad with, some beef on top of it every day. Great. It doesn't affect them as much. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. That's what, we started out in I wanted to make a point in the front matter of our carnivore book that what's your why? What is your why for doing this? Because that can not only dictate how you do it, but also how extreme or how much you want to restrict can really be determined by that. Because somebody like me, I found out about 8 years ago that I had Lyme disease.
Mhm.
And I should say I started having symptoms 8 years ago. I found out I had Lyme 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago,
Okay.
and started treating it. But with me, I believe, and this is my theory on it, why carnivore works so well for me, is because when you have Lyme disease, it depresses your immune function so much. It can trigger autoimmune, states and all these problems, and all these things creep in that normally your body can handle or detoxify. Yep. Well, when you're loaded down with the Lyme and all the issues there, I think those oxalates and those anti-nutrients they build up more in somebody like me. And so literally if Lyme disease it can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. For me, it's a lot of back and neck pain and immobility. Ouch. But also a lot of migrating pain where I'd wake up with a knee that feels like it was sprained for no reason. Next day I wake up, it's in the other knee or my ankle or my hip. And it was so frustrating. And I still get flare-ups occasionally, but pretty rare these days. But it's so frustrating because literally it's like you sprained your knee. I mean, you're hobbling around all day in pain. And as soon as I went carnivore, within a day, 1 to 2 days, it was pretty much gone for good. Yeah. I can tell if I add, a little bit too much, if we go out to eat or something, and that, like just the other night, there was a burger that had bacon, but then it had a little bit of coleslaw on it. So basically just cabbage and stuff. Yep. And I ate it, and next day my knee pain was back, and the migrating pain. So I know that it doesn't work for me, but other people with no Lyme disease, no metabolic syndrome, probably can handle a lot more, but it's a kind of a spectrum of, what you can handle.
And that's kind of like, I relate it to fine tuning an engine in a car. Are you trying to make it a supercar so it goes as fast as possible? Or do you want just that it reliable, doing what it needs to do, and going from there? So there's, what are you looking for? I mean, somebody who's, older definitely wants to be feeling better, but they still want to enjoy some things later in life. Okay, great. Somebody like myself who's thinking longevity, I want to be 70, 80, 90 years old running around with the grandkids. As compared to being in a nursing home. So why are you doing it?
Yeah, there's other thing. That's, again, what's your why? We have clients or people that we work with who have things like bipolar, where they actually, if they include too many plants, symptoms start coming back.
Yep.
So that's a real, they need to stick to it because, that improves their life.
Yep. A friend of mine that I follow online, she's been controlling her seizures with keto for 3 years now, I think. And yet all her doctors said, it's going to kill you. And she's like, I've lost 140 pounds. I run around like a rabbit, and feels great. So, it's a matter of, there's some trial and error with it, obviously, but again, it goes back to, it's amazing how good you feel.
Yeah. We have, that's the biggest thing is you see, Maria's been helping people for 20 years and time and time again, they stick with it because of how good they feel.
Yeah.
The weight loss, that's an extra bonus. That's nice, but I'm off, 4 medications. I feel amazing. I never have an afternoon slump. My mental clarity's through the roof. My energy's through the roof. That's why they're sticking with it.
Yep. I mean,
and that's very common.
Yeah. The phrase I keep using, and people on this podcast are going to hear it till I'm done, is, you come to a keto, low carb, or carnivore for the weight loss, but you stick for everything else. Which, circling back to, some of the things your wife cleared up and took care of. I mean, IBS, PCOS, back to that. This isn't just a weight loss plan, which is what a lot of people think of. It's like, oh, I want to start this to lose weight. And yet more and more people, and I'm having several of them on the podcast, it's like, I'm not doing this for weight loss. Yeah. This is for, like you've already mentioned, things with your wife or others with, bipolar disorder. I'm going to have Carrie Brown on, and that's what she's been using that for herself. And so, let's get into how a little bit how this actually helps out a lot of other things other than just the waistline.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of interesting. We started, so Maria been doing this again for like 20 years, and I about 10, 12 years ago, we kept getting these amazing testimonies. And I'm like, we should save these, right? Save them off into a folder or something. So I just started collecting them in our email under a folder for testimonies. And it got to the point where this became a database of, have you ever had somebody with this? And I can go in there and I can search and I can find 5 testimonies of people with Parkinson's, 5 testimonies of people with MS, you know, in the improvements that they realized. And so about 2 years ago, I told Maria, we need to put in our presentations like 5 or 6 slides at the end, where the slide is like 10 testimonies of these issues, this issue, because especially when we were doing some of these healthcare events where a lot of the attendees are doctors, nurses,
like
healthcare
when
professionals.
You guys were at Low Carb Denver 2 years ago.
And Low Carb San Diego and those type of events. I want them to see this is not just weight loss, and that's why we wanted to started putting these in. And I can give them, if you want to include those slides in a PDF in this post or whatever, we can supply that. But it's really amazing because you see some of this and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, this is, and part of it, you know, people will kind of ding it sometimes and say, anytime you lose weight, you'll see improvements in a lot of different health things.
Right.
Yes, that's part of it, but that's not all of it, because we see things like, you know, A1C coming from 11 to like 5.2 in like 2 months.
Yeah.
And
the weight loss is minimal.
Yeah. Or there's one testimony in those slides of somebody with, I think it was colitis, a bad case of, or no, it was Crohn's. And it was like 90 pounds. So he actually needed to gain weight.
Yeah.
And as a result of keto, massive improvement, no flare-ups, was gaining weight, right?
Wow.
So, I mean, there's a lot more going on than just the weight loss that's causing this healing.
And more people are finally coming out with that. I mean, I spend a lot of my time on Twitter just scrolling through and seeing, it's like, look, like you just said, a lot of these people are not losing weight. They've lost 5 pounds, but again, the A1C dropped dramatically. Sleep improves dramatically. And it's like, they're still a large person like, you know, I used to be, but it's not filling your body with junk. It's got to fight to get out. And you're truly nurturing is the word that comes to mind, but you're feeding your body what it needs. It doesn't have to fight for it.
Definitely. We started working, you know, we're good friends with Dr. Eric Westman, and, you know, he's been doing a lot of publicizing, you know, case studies and things. I know Dr. Tro started doing some. Dr. Westman actually lent us a intern of his to help get some things published from some of our clients, some of these amazing successes, just so that get it out in the literature so other doctors can see that, you know, there's a lot of potential here beyond weight loss.
For anyone listening to this, if you haven't, you can go back and listen to my talk with Dr. Westman and Amy Berger. And Dr. Tro's busy right now, but I'm going to get him later on. But 2 friends of mine also, they're great men that just, their whole focus is, here is the actual evidence that this works. It's not you know, a hearsay. They're putting case studies together and presenting it so that it can be published, so people can say, oh, it's published material now. Their work is highly beneficial. I know. Well, one of the examples I've thought of is what both of them have done in bringing this out.
Well, and that's the thing is, you know, Dr. Westman thinks that we need more of these N=1 examples, because, you know, there's what's the most important thing for a doctor when a patient comes in is outcomes. Does the patient leave me when I'm done with treatment in better or worse shape? And if it's better on all these blood markers, and he's off all, you know, 4 medications and all this stuff, that's what they want. You know, that's what every doctor wants. And at the end of the day, you know, randomized controlled trials are very expensive and hard. If you get enough of these N=1 examples, that's enough, you know, momentum to get more people to try using it in their practice.
Well, and that's what caused Dr. Westman to do it himself. 2 of his patients, independent of each other, came in on using Atkins. And so he reached out to Atkins and said, hey, we need to figure this out, you know, on a study. And, you know, well, the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, we had discussed that with him just a few days ago in our conference. We have a keto conference going on right now, which is kind of different than a typical conference. You get each week, you get a new set of like presentation, testimonies, and then a live Q&A on the weekends. This goes on until the end of November. Okay. And so it's going to be, we have 12 amazing speakers. The combined experience with keto and low carb of the speakers is over 175 years. We've got Dr. Westman, we've got Dr. Neiman, we've got Dr. Finney. So tons of experience.
Just the three of them is almost half of it right there.
Yeah. You know, Maria's got 20 and I've got 15. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is neat. And of course, it's interesting how the community is actually, this is just a side note, shifted. All of the conferences are gone. And yet we're finding ways to still get it out there in ways that people can consume it and understand it and hopefully turn their lives around also.
And that's why we priced it at, you can get a basic ticket for $30 and you get 12 weeks of weekly webinars. We want to just get the word out there and help more people.
And that's what it's about. I mean, that was the point of the podcast, because so many people, you read and you hear, oh, it's too complicated, I don't know what to do. And they're listening to everything instead of concentrating on one thing. And just saying, okay, what is low carb or keto and how do I do it? And then just concentrate on basically get rid of the sugar, get rid of the grains, eat whole real food. Keep carbs under 20, you're good. It is that simple. But I know, I mean, when you start looking at some of these recipes and you're like, I have no clue what that is. What is that ingredient? You know, and you don't, they're fun. Yes. I mean, we enjoy them on occasion, but try to keep it as simple as possible. And once you've been into it, and I'll use today as an example, you learn how to do it. So I texted my wife and said, hey, did you get anything out for supper? Nope. Okay, I'll go to the store. And I already knew what I was going to buy. Eggs, sausage. And since we just got an air fryer, I'm trying some air fried pork belly.
There you go.
I walked by the deli and there was a whole bunch of marked down pizzas. So I stopped and took a picture of it to share later on, because you know what? In the past, I would have went, we forgot to get food out and that's marked down. It's going home.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I know how I'm going to feel after eating this as compared to a high protein, good, healthy meats.
Yeah.
I'm going, turned around, got what I needed and went home.
Well, we're, on the day-to-day basis around here in mealtime, we're hardly in the kitchen more than 10 minutes. I mean, it's so easy. You throw a steak on the grill or you get a burger ready and throw it in a pan.
Yep.
I mean, it's so easy. Just, it doesn't have to be complicated. Maria's made amazing recipes to satisfy anyone. Part of that is, we have kids.
Yep.
So we want them to be able to have, what they see other kids having in a healthier version. So that, there's definitely, situations where that is, great to have. And that's why we created so many of these kinds of recipes to replicate a lot of the favorites. And the other thing is in transitioning, it can be real tough.
Exactly.
Oh, I wish I could have biscuits and gravy. You get that craving or whatever that food is that you crave. Well, you can make one. You can make your own.
It's like your wife's lasagna recipe. I never heard it called protein noodles before. I had already done something very similar. And I'm like, protein noodle. I clicked on, I went, oh, lunch meat. It's like, okay, don't use noodles, use meat. Yeah. Other than that, it's about the same recipe.
It's basically the same.
There's so many ways to.
So many people say they prefer that over traditional.
Yeah.
Even better.
And you don't have the problems of eating pasta after the fact. No. Which is now I'm getting hungry. I have to make that one of these days. It's been a while. But it's amazing. It's like you said, the transition period. Sometimes you need those comfort foods. I mean, I'm sure you're the same way as we are now. We don't need them. It's ground beef, chicken, and pork, just how we cooking it today. And if we feel like it, we throw in a side with it. We keep our cauliflower and broccoli in the freezer when we want it, and there we go.
The other thing about that is that, a lot of the processed foods and everything that's in, traditional American diet is so hyper palatable and so sweet and so And what happens is when you get that crap out, and over time, your palate shifts,
Yes.
and that steak is enough.
Yeah.
We've had so many people. We've had people. We mentioned before the podcast here, Maria's egg pudding, which
Mm-hmm.
if you have kids, here's the story behind it. We had little baby Kai. He was about 2 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We tried cooking eggs every way we could think of, and he would not eat them. He didn't want eggs. So we're like, I know eggs are good for him. I'm going to get some eggs in him somehow. Right? So Maria puts on her, alchemist hat and starts playing with stuff. And she threw some hard-boiled eggs in and she made this chocolate pudding.
Yep.
Which if you leave it in the fridge overnight, the next day, it's the most luxurious chocolate pudding you've ever had. And you can also make other flavors if you like too.
Yep.
But it got him to eat it, and now he gobbled up a bunch of eggs, right? For his meal. So that's what a lot of these, it comes from our own past, having to find ways to make it work for our kids and everyone.
And everybody, yeah. And you don't know it's eggs. Now my wife found out the hard way: don't overboil the eggs. It had an odd consistency the first time, but okay, I think that's what I did. She adjusted, and a week or so ago, we had some friends over, and hey, you guys want some chocolate pudding? Mom knew what it was. Nobody else did.
Yeah.
Kids sat there and loved it. No clue that they were eating probably the healthiest pudding they've ever had in their life.
That's right. And it helps to have a real high-speed blender. If you've got it just kind of a standard blender, then it's hard to get it real smooth.
Yep.
But it's an amazing recipe.
It makes a big difference. And growing up, I was always hamburger helper, or even when I got out of the house. It's quick, it's easy. And so a lot of I use the term recipes loosely that I make for home are hamburger helper. It's ground beef and raised cauliflower. Yeah. And then you season it different every single time. For example, with our Select Savory seasonings, add a little cream, throw in some cheese, and you could make a cheeseburger one by throwing some bacon and barbecue sauce in, or you shift and adjust. You still have hamburger helper, but it's so much healthier and it's quick and easy to make.
I remember where I started going with that. So that pudding, the hyperpalatability. If you've been keto for a while, it shifts so much that we have people who don't even add sweetener to it. It's sweet. The eggs are sweet enough as it is for them, for their palate, because
it makes a big difference. So much. I mean, I still remember the first time, and I think it was broccoli I was eating, and it hit me. I'm like, this is actually a vegetable, and it's sweet.
Yeah.
Even my kids, on a rare occasion, I'll buy a diet root beer because I used to drink regular. I'm like, I didn't drink beer. I drank root beer. That was my addiction. And the one brand I got, of course, the kid's like, oh, I want to try some. And my oldest is like, oh, that's way too sweet.
Yeah.
It wasn't even sugar. It was Splenda.
Yeah.
So, his taste buds are such that it's like, okay, he knows better. And he knows the difference from it.
That's great. And it's important too, if you have young kids, to start them out that way too.
Yeah. Because
you can change their palate so much early on. If you start adding these high sugar things, it just messes with their palate, and that's why you get a lot of kids these days that, they'll only eat one food, or because their palate has just been so restricted by the the overload of sugar and that on the palate. So that can be a huge difference if you start it early.
And keeping kids off of sugar is going to help them with mood, anxiety, attitudes. Now, granted, my kids have their moods and their attitudes, anxieties like every other kid.
Yeah.
But we've said more than once, I couldn't imagine them if they were eating that stuff, and always on that roller coaster of their blood sugars going up and down and crashing and everything else.
Absolutely. We've actually had several clients with kids on the autism spectrum, and they see massive improvements. One went to a whole new level on autism spectrum just from diet.
Yeah.
Huge.
I forgot the documentary that where they followed a family, and their little girl was, I believe, autistic, and she was 5 or 6, but functionally she was 3. And she almost didn't eat for a week. Wasn't quite that long, but they were offering her food, but she didn't get her goldfish. Well, a kid's not going to starve itself. She started eating, and it was such an improvement. Dad calls mom and goes, she's eating with a fork, which is something she'd never done before. It was always hands. And then she would actually talk to people and strangers, whereas before it was like, you're not family. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
It's going to bug me until I remember what that was. But
and again, that's not weight loss, right? That's diet is, the old cliche, you are what you eat, but I think there's so much to diet that can affect everything that ails that. In our book Keto, we made this tree, called it the disease tree, and you have essentially the trunk of it is like insulin and the signaling hormones.
Yep.
The roots are all of the inputs to the body. This is how I like to. I'm an electrical engineer in my background, so I like to think of things from a system perspective, right? Inputs and outputs, and so the inputs are diet, obviously a huge one, but also things like vitamin D, activity level, getting enough sun exposure, exercise, things like smoking or not, how much you sleep. These are all inputs. Yeah. And they can mess the system up if they're off. And what are the outputs? The leaves on the tree, you got cancer, you got autoimmune disorders, all of these things that ail us today, the vast majority of which could be traced back to those root causes. Something's off. And I think if we look at it more that way in our healthcare, instead of here's a pill that will mask this symptom, not really fix the root cause, but that's what we got to get back to.
And it's great to see more and more doctors getting there, and almost every single one of them, it's because of their own struggles. I mean, they themselves, picking on Dr. Tro again, went from 300 plus pounds, and his wife basically saying, "You're not a stupid guy. Why are you fat?" And he sat down and said, "You're right," and figured it out and realized, it is what I'm eating, and has made it, a dramatic change. And now his goal, along with many others, are stepping out on their own to help people, because they understand the healthcare system, the way it's designed now, is broken, and direct care is going to be the way to take care of people.
Yes. And that's the key is, Dr. Ted Neiman, he still works in a practice, and I have had candid conversations with him about how, if he sits down with somebody and spends 20 minutes talking about diet and here's the food you need, all that, versus spending 2 minutes with them and giving them a prescription, he gets paid twice as much for giving the prescription as he does spending 10 times as much to fix the root cause. Yeah. So it becomes this whole system approach that is broken, where these doctors, they got to feed their family too, and it becomes very hard to do it the right way even. So,
and a lot of times they got to still pay for their education. That's not cheap. Yeah. And so it's a catch-22 in many cases. I got to pay the bills and so forth, and there's a fine line that they've got to walk. I don't envy them in the slightest, but I definitely praise the ones that are out there doing it and doing everything they can. The magic pill was the documentary I was thinking of. That little.
Yes, that's a good one.
One of the first ones. That was one that I always enjoyed.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think one of the first movies for us was the Fathead.
Yep. That was an excellent one. He did another one called Fathead Kids. It's a cartoon for kids, which was great. But that sidetrack. There are so many documentaries out there that people can watch. I mean, there's also a documentary that Vinnie Tortorich put out, which was excellent. Fat Fiction just came out this year. Yeah. I got to meet the lady behind that, and that's the information is there.
We need
people
more,
can find it,
because there's a lot of on that perspective, a little bit of a tangent, but there's so much money behind the vegetarian type of movement. Yep. And you get people like what was the Game Changers? What's the guy who produced that? He's the Titanic guy. You're getting massive money and stuff behind that movement, and not science based. That's why we need more people behind this from the other side, and getting that truth out. Chris Bell, I'm not sure where it's at or if it's actually going to come out, but he was working on a documentary as well. And we flew out there for some of those things, but I think definitely need more. I mean, there is definitely a lot more now. There's got to keep having these kind of conversations and getting more and more eyeballs on this, because there is such a pressure from the other side.
Yep. Well, that was James Cameron that did the Game Changers.
Yeah.
And what they don't tell you is he is highly invested in pea protein.
Yeah, like $250 million.
It's like, okay, so is this a commercial?
Yeah, well,
or
what do
are you truly trying to help people?
You can't get enough protein because even like pea protein is about 0.6 on the PCDAA score. So if beef is 1 and they're 0.6, you mean almost twice as much protein from pea to build and maintain
the amount of beef
as you would from beef, right?
Yep.
So you can't do that. You can't eat 8 cups of peas every So you gotta take protein powders. But
and make up for it. I know others are still working. Brian Sanders is working on his food line. And I know Vinny said that when he got done with his, he's got enough for a second documentary. So
awesome.
He's supposedly still working on that. And just more people. I mean, I know some people step back and go, but it's already been done. Yeah, but it's not been done from your perspective. So if you're listening to this going, I've got an idea for a documentary, go for it. I'm definitely not that person, but go for it, because if I remember correctly, Vinny and Brian Sanders were talking at one point, and they both realized we got 2 completely different thoughts and ideas here.
Yeah.
And they branched out because they realized they could make 2 completely different movies, even though they're discussing the same basic topic.
Well, just in our conversation here, you talk about certain people that have to go to carnivore for, certain things. You've got other people that can have more plants, and, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, if you will. But, if this is helpful, I really like Amy Berger said in our conference, I think it was Dr. Volek that she heard say this, but we start to sound like televangelists a little bit. Oh, yes. Any ailment you have. But what Dr. Volek said was, keto's a really, really big hammer, and there's a lot of little nails.
A lot of nails.
And so, why not give it a try?
That is a really good way to put it. It is indeed a big hammer, and there's a lot of nails that need to be taken care of.
Yeah. And it seems to work more often than not.
Yep.
That's the thing, skin issues, eczema, for psoriasis, you name it, digestive issues, Crohn's, colitis, IBS, acid reflux. We've seen, Alzheimer's, obviously. It's basically type 3 diabetes.
Yep.
So the brain can't run on glucose anymore, so it can run on
ketones.
Yeah. We've even seen, there's been more and more research, like Dr. Dom and the cancer. We had one client that her very aggressive, inoperable brain tumor that actually after just 1 month that was growing rapidly. After 1 month, it shrank a little bit. So, I mean, there's a lot of little things here that can be applicable, and so why not give it a try?
Yep. Specifically, Josh Perry, former BMX rider, he had brain surgery to remove tumors, and I think he still has 4. They're still there. Yeah. But because he follows a ketogenic diet, they have not grown.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah. And now he's a motivational speaker and encouraging people, because he's like, look, you only have one life to live. And, oh, by the way, this way of eating is keeping me alive. And he understands that. And it's amazing how a lot of people just poo-poo that and go, oh, it's just you. There's a lot of just yous out there, and it's being ignored, unfortunately.
A lot of N=1s out there.
Yep. And I find back to kind of what you said earlier with, your wife, hey, the food pyramid, that it works. And she realized, well, no, it doesn't. I think most people that they've tried everything else. It just seems to be a common theme with people who have gone low carb, keto, or carnivore, that, hey, I did exactly what it said. I had the grains, I cut the fat, and I felt horrible. I was always hungry or hangry. And yet when they finally turned around and started eating foods that are nourishing their bodies, it's like, I'm not hungry anymore. I've had friends and family that it's like, look, you're going to get to the point you don't want breakfast. That'll never happen. And then, 6, 8 months later, I'm not eating until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I just have my coffee and off I go. It's like, well, yeah, because you're eating yourself. I mean, you're eating that donut from 12 years ago that stuck itself on your side there. But
well, that's a lot of times we'll have clients that I forgot to eat breakfast. Like I was busy, I just totally forgot.
Yep.
Because they could never imagine before. But one of the things that tripped when you said that was in our conference, we have these testimonies too, that because we wanted to be inspiring and share some of these N=1s.
Mm-hmm.
The first one we had was Twyla, who absolutely amazing testimony. She started, she'd basically been on a diet since she was 16.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it was like 14. It was just crazy. And she's, I think 50 now or somewhere around there. And literally nothing worked. She tried everything all through the years. And then about, I don't know if it's eight years ago now, she found us in their books and started going down this path. She's lost 245 pounds.
Wow.
The list of ailments she had that she reversed is just stunning. When she started listing off all these things, and I'm just thinking in my head, how did you function? How did you keep functioning with 250 extra pounds on, plus all these problems that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis? And she's actually going to be on the cover of Women's World magazine in October.
Oh, wow.
They contacted us. We gave her information. They got her full testimony to the cover shoot. She's going to be on there. So check that out. It'll be awesome.
That's cool. It's just great when you see the people you talk to and you help and those transformations, because it's truly helping. It's changing their lives.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that I'm doing this. It's because I know it'll help somebody and it'll change their lives also. Back to, like you said, forgetting to eat breakfast. A friend of mine that I helped, I never told him he wouldn't eat breakfast. And we went to go visit. He's like, yeah, my wife, well, hey, it's lunchtime. And he goes, no, I'm not hungry. It ain't lunchtime yet. He figured it out on his own.
Yeah.
It hit him that if I'm not hungry, I don't need to eat. As Dr. Westman says, it's real simple. Drink and eat when you're hungry. Don't when you're not.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Intermittent fasting just comes naturally when you're eating this way.
Yep.
Your hormones are under control, so you don't have these wild swings in hunger.
Yep.
You don't have the afternoon slump where, at 2 o'clock, you're just, after you eat a carb-filled lunch, 2 o'clock hits at the office and you're about ready to take a nap. That's gone.
Yep.
That was me. I was engineer, and I'd start grabbing for candy laying around, the stuff laying around in the office for energy around 2 o'clock because I would crash. It's just all gone. And that's, for me, that consistency of energy and of mental clarity and focus is one of the things I love the most. I can sit here and, like, this whole conference, it was Maria. We put it all together. I did all the website and code and, getting all the website stuff set up. I can sit here and in 8 hours get a week's worth of work done that it would have took me, on an office job.
Yep.
Literally. I am just hyper focused. The mental clarity is just, it's amazing.
And I understand completely. When I was putting together the websites for my companies, I just sit down, do it, be done. And I've had a couple of people say, hey, how much did you spend on doing that? It was my time. Yeah. No, you had to have paid somebody tens of thousands of dollars to do that. I'm like, no, I used, picked up the website that I'm selling stuff through and off I went.
Figured it out.
And they're just like, wow. It's like, well, in my case, part of that is it's not that hard, but again, that mental clarity and the ability to stop and think. There's things come to you a whole lot easier. You don't have that brain fog. And I understand the naps.
Oh man. Yeah.
Sunday afternoons, I still get a little upset because I don't get my nap anymore, but that's okay. I'd rather not have the nap and be able to do other things in the meantime. Now that football started, I can watch football again.
Yeah, there you go.
It makes a big difference.
For sure.
So, well, we do want to be respectful of your time. If I can spit it out, I'd be okay. couple questions I'd always like to end on.
Yep.
And first one is, what's your favorite simple recipe / meal for you, whether it's just you or the family, as the case may be?
Well, I would say my boys absolutely love the protein noodle lasagna. They're far and away their favorite meal, I think. Myself, you know, I would say a ribeye, but for me, a good burger can be pretty darn close.
Yeah.
A really good burger with the cheese and all the toppings and bacon, and that's just, I love that. That's probably my go-to.
And with a burger, you can adjust a little more than just a ribeye.
Yeah.
Different cheese, add an egg, spices. There's a lot of variety. Or I picked up, anyway, you can make stuffed hamburgers. It's a little thing where makes a little horseshoe and you fill it with whatever you want.
Another way is Maria does this with some of her carnivore recipes is if you take like a prosciutto, you can make and put some cheese. You can almost make like a ravioli in the air fryer. Get that crispy outside. I mean, you can mimic a lot of things. You'd be surprised.
And I haven't told the family this one yet. I'm going to try making mozzarella sticks, except it's going to be a cheese stick wrapped in bacon thrown in the air fryer.
Yeah, prosciutto would work too.
Yep, that would work real well too.
Nice the sheet, and it kind of holds all the cheese,
everything in there.
Yeah.
So it's like there's so many ways to enjoy the things you used to.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is, eventually you don't care for it. It's more of a nostalgia in my case. It's fun. I enjoy it, but we usually make it when we have guests.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what's one simple tip you would give somebody that's either, looking at starting a low carb ketogenic lifestyle or they got into it, but they're like, man, what do I do? I'm overwhelmed. What's just one simple tip you would recommend?
Just to keep it simple, focus on the protein, make protein the focus of the plate. That's where you're getting all your vitamins and minerals anyway. You don't need the kale to get your vitamins. You get them from the steak. If you want to add kale, fine. Add it for texture, color, but don't look at it as where you're getting your nutrition. Look at the steak, look at the beef, look at the chicken. Look at the animal protein as your big focus of the plate.
That's a good suggestion. Focus on the animal protein. The veggies are there as a literal side.
Yeah,
as they're intended to be.
Maria, she's kind of carnivore adjacent, if you will. She loves some grilled onions on a burger, or the salad sometimes. With her protein. But yeah, definitely focus on the protein though, because it makes it easy. Because protein has 0 carbs, pretty much, and so it helps you a lot with the whole macros and all that. So
makes a big difference. And so, where can people find you guys if they wanted to get out there and say, hey, I want a book, I want more information, I need to hire you, as the case may be. If they want a coach, how do they reach you guys?
Well, we have tons of free recipes and information on our blog. It's mariamindbodyhealth.com. You can get to most of our information from there, but we also have a support website that's called keto-adapted.com. Where we're hosting this conference. We've got all kinds of packages there. We got subscriptions there where you can be on weekly webinars with us to get questions answered live, Maria and I. So lots of support options out there. And then social media, it's usually Craig Emmerich or Maria Emmerich.
Okay. And those will all be in the show notes for everybody, because I know what it's like remembering all that stuff at the end of a podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, I can get it later. So I'll have that in there too. Awesome. Well, Craig, thanks for joining me. I appreciate the time, and I'm sure everybody else will too.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too.